Hello, hello. Oh, I should have known that that was going to do that. Give me 1 second here. Hey, there we go. There's that camera going. All right. How's everybody doing today? I hope you're doing all right. All right. So, where last we were working yesterday, we were working on some of our sorcerer archetypes here. So these being our subclasses. So we have the inheritance of the elements, which is our sort of Avatar: The Last Airbender style elemental adept archetype. So one of the things we're going to be working on, I don't know if it's going to be today or if it's going to be a future thing, is we're going to be working on signature investitures for each of these subclasses, and therefore they are going to get different, unique abilities that are flavorful and tied to their origin here. As far as Way of the Elements go, we did write up our stance options here with 5 different options for it. Our stance being the Sorcerer's Way here. And so when you choose this subclass, you will get access to these. So that would be Way of the Dancing River, which gives you resistance to the charmed condition, and then advantage when you try to escape grapple. It also buffs your results on the escape grapple tier table. It gives you the ability to convert elemental damage types into cold damage. And it allows you to become immune to conditions on the short term within encounters. Way of the Earthen Sentinel, this is our Earthbender type archetype. You are resistant to the petrified condition, and you count as one size larger than yourself for the purposes of resisting and escaping a grapple. Signature damage type, you can convert elemental damages into force damage. This, if you're coming from a 5e design standpoint, this is going to seem on the stronger side, but force damage is going to be mitigated a bit more in this RPG due to its due to there being more of a prevalence in characters and classes that resist it, as well as more options for it to exist. So therefore, by making it more ubiquitous, it will therefore become more normalized. Armor of Stone, gaining additional armor points and recovering and having an ability to recover armor points while you are rooted. Way of the Graceful Tempest as our Airbender archetype. Resistant to the Deafen condition and immunity to the Rooted condition, so you can't be really pinned down there. You can convert elemental damages into thunder. And then Spirit on the Wind, allowing you to become incorporeal when you shift or take the move action as your major action, so that you have more built-in damage mitigation in that sort of manner. And then finally, finally, as far as the Gestalt options here. The Roaring Inferno, giving you resistance to the Dazed and Frightened condition, so those are kind of going to be more widely used, so this is going to be a little bit more of a stronger resistance than our signature damage type. Convert elementals to fire, kind of obviously. And then finally, the Persistent Flame here, which is Of these, probably one of the slightly weaker ones, just because it is more circumstantial. But when you're dying, you get access to your full action economy instead of a reduced one. And then also, when you would be reduced to dying, you get a slight buffer being reduced to 1 hit point instead of 0 once per, I believe it's short rest. Yes. And then finally, we have an option that is a bit more designed so that you can create your own based on these elemental archetypes, and then we can also expand on this framework to create new elements: wood, metal, plasma, for like a sci-fi sort of setting. But that would be the Way of Balance option, one signature damage type option, and one option that is neither of those two. Hang on, it looks like one of my stream options here is itching. Give me one quick second. Okay, looks like I got everything sorted there. Sorry about that. I was having some stream issues, just with the setup I've currently got going here. But nonetheless, that would kind of be the general setup for the inheritance of the elements. Very much a sort of elemental caster. So for our next archetype here that we were working on yesterday, that would be the inheritance of the primordial fire. So this is your, if you play Dark Souls or are familiar with it, this is going to be your chaos fire controller. This is going to be your, this is designed to be the kind of core pyromancer archetype and like subclass for the game. So if you want to play someone who just truly has mastery over the element of fire, Sorcerer and Inheritance of the Primordial Fire is probably going to be the class and subclass option for you there. And so, as what we were doing yesterday, we once again did pass over creating the custom signature investiture for this class. We've kind of been holding off on doing all of the investitures so that we can begin to have a framework and then work out damage scaling at the time of creating them. And so what we did was we did our different sources of the fire. So if you are familiar with 5th edition kind of fighters, this follows a lot of the idea of a fighting style, and so it's something that you choose early on and then it just sticks with you for the remainder of your gameplay, so that even if you have multiple people who all take the same class, and even some of them taking the same subclass, there's a high likelihood that you are going to still be interacting with the game differently. And so in order to do this, we have 7 different fire options here. Each one is going to provide different triggers and different abilities when you cast spells that deal fire damage. Excuse me. And when you target creatures that are on fire. So here, I'll just gonna kind of read through those here so I can set up groundwork for what we're going to be doing later today for probably the other 2 classes, and then going back and building onto these subclasses. So our first option here is Dragonfire. When you deal fire damage to an opponent, or deal any damage to an opponent that has the damage over time incinerate condition, your damage ignores their resistances and immunities. Kind of talking through this is probably one of the slightly weaker options as far as this subclass goes, just because as a sorcerer you can enter your arcane overload stance, and therefore all of your damage will bypass resistances and immunities because the minimum sorcery die you can possess is a d4. That said, Dragonfire is still useful and good, because if you choose not to enter your arcane overload, this ability here, it still allows you to bypass those resistances. It still allows you to maximize your damage potential even in those situations. The next option we had created was Fairy Fire, which is much more of our kind of fey and tracking sort of ability. So when you deal fire damage to an opponent, the target creature is immune to incorporeal and invisible conditions until the start of your next turn, so that way you can basically always see and detect them. Additionally, while a creature is immune to these conditions, they cannot travel to another plane or teleport farther than 400 feet away from you. They're locked in place. And then finally, you have advantage on Perception Wisdom and Survival Wisdom challenges to track creatures you have dealt damage to with Fairy Fire until you complete a long rest. So they can't get away from you, they can't become invisible or shift to another plane, and then you can find them easier. And so this archetype here, this primordial flame that you control, is good for kind of locking down an opponent on the battlefield who might be trying to escape, who might want to, teleport away. It's good for creating a finality to them. Ghostfire, when you deal fire damage to a creature that has the incinerate condition, you become incorporeal until the start of your next turn. You just kind of become a ghost. It allows for a bit more damage mitigation and the like there. Hellfire, this is kind of our striker option here. When you deal fire damage to a creature that has the damage over time incinerate condition, you deal an additional burst of fire damage equal to your spellcraft modifier. So this is just striker on top of that. So the more times you invoke fire against them, you just get, your fire does more damage. And considering that you can ignore damage and resistance and immunity by being in Arcane Overload, this is just going to kind of burn through their hit points faster. Holy Fire. When you deal fire damage to an opponent, you grant one creature of your choice within 5 feet of the target resistance to one condition affecting them. So you make it easier for them to shrug off a condition at the start of their next turn. However, you can also choose to reduce your damage here with the Holy Fire. So as a part of dealing damage to the opponent, you can reduce your attack to its tier 1 result. When you reduce your attack's effectiveness in this manner, you don't grant resistance, you just end one condition of your choice on them. So let's say you have an ally who is 5 feet away from a T-Rex, and they've become petrified because the T-Rex has a Medusa style monster template applied to it, and it is turning people to stone with its bite. Just a scenario I have randomly concocted here. You can end that petrified condition, freeing that target creature there, or if they're maybe blinded or rooted, you can give them resistance to it so that they are able to, you know, perform better on their turn as far as maneuverability, as far as attack capabilities and powers. Starfire here. When you deal fire damage to an opponent, your damage ignores temporary hit points, reduces hit point total, and does not remove any temporary hit points the target creature has. So this is basically just giving fire damage true strike. Whenever you deal fire damage, it strikes true, and you don't have to worry about your damage being mitigated or sucked up by a temporary hit point shield. And that is how True Strike in this game is going to work. Just ignores temporary hit points, since that becomes a bit more of a ubiquitous design decision throughout different class structures here, throughout different monster designs and like monster theories and bits. Additionally, and actually finally here, as far as our options, Witchfire. So this is going to be your magical mitigation fire attack option. So when you deal fire damage to an opponent that has the damage over time incinerate condition, the target is baned until the start of your next turn. Baned is a rather minor condition that just inflicts disadvantage tier 1 on most rolls. So that's just going to be a reduction of 1d4 from their pool. However, if the target creature casts a spell while they are baned, and once again, this is a bane that condition that only lasts until the start of your next turn. So like they have one round to really just kind of either suck it up, or one round until you get to reapply it. If they cast a spell while baned, the bane condition lasts until they complete an extended rest or are targeted by a remove curse spell. So this basically turns into an almost permanent bane. Which is the bane condition does not stack, so it just lives on them at this point through since it's an enemy ability here, since it's an enemy thing, it's probably going to remain on them for the rest of the encounter until you capture, kill, or dispatch, or otherwise dispatch these enemies. Yeah. All right, and so that's where we get into our last two options here. Inheritance of the Scarlet Seals and Inheritance of the Verdant Grove. One of the things I was working with yesterday was kind of what these two, what these two subclasses should feel like. And like, what's the narrative reasoning for why someone should or would take these options? And as far as the Scarlet Seals here, this one is very much tied to my campaign setting. And so, I've got a 7-sealed gate that, has the Omphaloses of large draconic primal spirits in it that are holding one of their own captive due to a forced negotiation with a necromancer. It's complicated, it's chaotic, and honestly, you don't need to understand that in order to deal with the setting. But like, my idea here was, alright, so you are connected in some way to this past binding of these functional gods of the setting, and so you can draw on their different powers. And so I have been experimenting with that through several of my past campaigns, where different players would get different powers by being bound to these dragons, and so there could be, communication between them and, the deliverance of boons and the like. And as far as subclasses go, that's rather flavorful. As far as being something that is universally playable, universally acceptable. I don't have any way of actually tracking this sort of thing at this time, but I can distinctly imagine in my head that upon publishing this book, this subclass would likely not get played. Maybe it's great, maybe it is mechanically, wonderful and mechanically well balanced, incredibly powerful. But because everyone is playing in their own campaign setting, this feels like an intrusion of my setting and my lore upon your GM. It feels like I'm saying, you're playing my game, you have to play in my setting. And that I'm not opposed to that in certain smaller instances. Like, I'll reference a couple iconic heroes here and there, and maybe ability names or descriptions, like things that, a player might have used a spell in a fascinating, interesting, or, thematic manner. But this is inherently saying, no. Your campaign setting now has the Seven Sealed Gate. It has the Twilight Obelisk. It has all of these proper nouns and events somewhere within its history. And the thing is, the Shattered Seas and its design is this sort of cosmic apocalypse setting as this multiverse is beginning to either expand or collapse in on itself due to different actions and manipulations by grand wizards and sorcerers and all of that sort of stuff. I don't want to necessarily impose that upon your setting. Like, could this sort of work well for like a Dark Sun? Yes, absolutely. Could this work for a Spelljammer? A little bit, yeah, because it's, cosmic. We're traveling through space, the planes, all that sort of stuff. But like, if I look to something like Exandria, less so. If I look to something like Ahriman, maybe a little bit, but less so. If I look to like MCDM and Orden, a little bit, kinda, but not really. And so there are elements in this book that tell you about how things are in my setting, but they're suggestions, they're ideas. You don't have to use them. They're just how I rule these different monsters, how I give them different abilities, and sometimes how they influence your world. Like, we were talking with the world building streams a while back about things like the Aboleth. Now, my Aboleth is a fused monstrosity caused by a space station getting shunted backwards in time, and, having all of the crew and humanoids there fusing into this one horrible, monstrous creature that lives at the bottom of the elemental, lives at the bottom of the realm of primordial water. And that bit of lore is very unique to my setting, I hope. But that doesn't mean you can't just take the Aboleth and say, all of this lore is cool, but it's not for me. I just want this multi-limbed, multifaceted psionic behemoth that controls this underwater city that can do Aboleth-y stuff, because I'm familiar with 5e. And so I want to put that into my setting here. I might change its appearance a little bit here and there to better fit the story that I want to tell. So like, you can discard my lore in that way, but you can't really do that with a subclass. Your friend comes to the table and like, I want to play Inheritance of the Scarlet Seals. Okay. I don't have that in my setting. And so I am going to replace this subclass from a thematic standpoint. And so I went through the process, I went through everything, and I was looking for what are some of the different holes, what are the different gaps that my sorcerer class does not have that, people would expect in coming to this game. And the answer I came up with is something that I desperately do want to do, but it won't be a part of the core book, and that is psionics. We've discussed psionics briefly before in kind of talking about what makes the sorcerer unique. Sorcerers cast investitures as their primary spellcraft form. Investitures are not necessarily arcane. Investitures can't be counterspell. They can be manipulated a little bit because they do share commonality with magic, but they aren't directly able to be counterspelled because they're not spells. Divine magics, those are spells. They're all working on this arcane weave. Primal magic, manipulating the environment in this way, also spells. The wizard, they are learning arcane spells. They are learning about how this world works. But sorcerers, they have this spark in them. And this is what they're doing with it. They're commanding the world around them through an outside force. Usually their own, usually one that is based on, their inheritance, where they come from. Usually because there's maybe some intermingling of, draconic bloodlines somewhere down the chain, or perhaps they've been infused with magical potential from being near planar barriers or gates. Maybe they were an experiment by vast cosmic aliens like the Selenari on Deavos. Things like that. That sort of magic does not interact with the arcane weave, and so therefore they cannot be counterspelled. Psionics work the same way. Psionics is inherently the language of the Ulathic, my settings version of Mind Flayers, and so as they are projecting themselves backwards in time from the future, they are creating these different nodes, these elder brains throughout all of the cosmic history of the setting, and therefore you have this thin network of psionics that exists at all times, creating this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy as they are manipulating their own origins and building up a stronger future that we will either get to later in the development of this game, watching as that kind of becomes substantially even more of a problem, or in an eventual kind of sci-fi spin-off. But that is a long way down the pipeline, but it's things that I'm thinking about because it gives us, a framework to go off of and allows us to introduce casual sci-fi elements into this game as relics of Mind Flayers. And so, psionics, therefore, are very similar to sorcery in that they are not manipulating the arcane weave. And so since sorcery isn't doing that and can't be counterspelled, psionics also cannot be counterspelled. They're learning a lot of things similar to wizards, but it is more about controlling this innate talent and controlling this sort of innate supernatural force. And so therefore, having the sorcerer be a little bit of a way to slip a psionic subclass into the core game feels right. It feels like a good way to go about it. The other option I was having, in thinking and playing, was maybe we have a wizard subclass that is researching or learning about these different reaches and elemental processes and this sort of secret underground other layer of magic that resists further exploration. And so I think when we get to our wizard subclasses and such, we're going to start toying into that, especially with things like the Order of Thaumaturphagy wizard, which has this sort of dark twist to it. But all of that being said, Inheritance of the Scarlet Seals is going a little bit by the wayside, because I want to, once again, make this broad, make this something that is much more universal, something that is much more broadly applicable to other people's games. Sure, your mind flayers might not come from the future, but like, you probably have mind flayers of some sort. You probably have psionic entities living in your setting, and so therefore we can have this sort of inheritance of this grand psionic potential showing up and interacting with your characters in such a way that, you know, the Seven Sealed Gate doesn't really fulfill that fantasy. So, Inheritance of the Aberrant Minds. Now, I was toiling over the naming of this because I'm rather pedantic in these sort of situations. And so for the Sorcerer here, like for what this subclass is, there was a very strong part of me that's like, I don't want to name this the same thing that, you know, D&D named their psionic sorcerer. But at the same time, I really couldn't find a name that was necessarily better. Inheritance of the Void's Reach, Inheritance of the Void's Call, Inheritance of the Aberrant Voice, the Voice from the Stars. All of these different vague cosmic horror sort of sounding names and identities, but no. This is the Inheritance of the Aberrant Minds. And once again, it is technically distinct from 5e in that I put an S on the end. I don't think that would necessarily hold up in court if I, you know, fully crib how that sorcerer works here. I'm not. I'm mostly just borrowing the name and the idea and the identity. Because this is less... This is more of a subclass that is, I've inherited something from Aberrant Minds, from something that is thinking, from something that is out there in the cosmos that is manipulating our world accidentally, slowly, secretly, that sort of thing. And so, therefore, I can get away with maybe having slightly more specialized things here, like what is this sort of creature's agenda? What is the Mind Flayer agenda here? What did they give you? It also gives me the freedom to have perhaps backgrounds and pitfalls be built into here as a part of its narrative features. Baldur's Gate 3, like, the intro cinematic and like the introduction to the game and its protagonists is absolutely fantastic, because it tells you who the bad guys are, they're mind flayers, tells you why you're special, because you've got a tadpole in your brain and you're gonna become a mind flayer at some point. Like, Inheritance of the Aberrant Minds, the inheritance could be that they put a tadpole behind your eye and now you've got latent psionic abilities. That could be one of the things that we do to, you know, discuss the flavor of this subclass. So let's go ahead and just kind of quickly swap these things over here. All right. And then finally here we have Inheritance of the Verdant Grove. which I also did make a slight tweak to its naming. More because I want to lean into a little bit more of a darker and sinister thing. The Verdant Grove here, the idea for this subclass is you are connected to nature, you are commanding life, and just kind of its general processes. You are connected to the different spirits and ghosts of the land who are, living, who are maybe touched by this sort of deeper ethereal nature. And, cool. I like that. And as I was going through it, I was like, this kind of feels and sounds like the Green from the Old Gods of Appalachia podcast, which, if you have not listened, check it out. They rock. I absolutely adore the stories that Steve and Cam tell. And yeah, no, just Old Gods of Appalachia, it rocks. And so I was like, well, the Verdant Grove, the sort of magic that these sorcerers control, feels like this sort of ancient primal force of life, like the Green there. And I think that's going to be a little bit of what I use as reference in my design of this subclass. This sort of, ancient ancestral history with the land that grants different abilities once in a while. Some people are born blessed by the Green, and that makes them targets of the inner dark. And there's this sort of cosmic struggle that is going on, in these small towns and communities. And so the one change that I have here to this subclass is grove sounds rather peaceful, rather pleasant. A grove of trees, this, nice pastoral countryside, this sort of bucolic fantasy. The Verdant Grove, it's a happy place, it's comfortable. Whereas there is a darkness to life. There is rot, there is death, there are natural cycles that we are going to be controlling, manipulating, exploiting, bringing about in some way or another. And so, Inheritance of the Verdant Hollow. It's a bit darker, it's a bit shadier, it's a bit more mystical, it's more thematic. Additionally, as far as notes go that I have, got this one. I'm figuring that we are going to want to swap our fighting style sort of ability here to be our first level thing, since we get our first level investiture. Then we would also get at first level our subclass and our fighting style. And so that way our fighting style can then influence our first investiture, and then second level we kind of get our signature class-based investiture. So let's just go ahead and, copy that around here. First level, then stack and level here. Alright, then we go ahead and swap out Spirit of Fire to become the first level feature here. So that means also these words are now entered into the sort of canon of the subclass. And so we can then, if we really need to, call upon them. We can say, if your if you have the Spirit of Witch Fire within you, this does something slightly different. I don't plan on it, but, you know, it's good to have the freedom and the technology to do so, depending on how we go forward. Alright, and then Verdant Hollow here. Then we just swap out first here for second, and second for first. Alright, so there we go. That brings us kind of, all in all, up to date. I'm going to take a quick break, take a quick drink. I'll be right back in just 1 second. All right. Let's get into the main bit of what we're going to be tackling today. All right, so everything said that we needed to say about, where we've been, what we've been working on. So let's go ahead and start figuring out what this sort of flavorful fire, not fire, this sort of flavorful archetype for the inheritance of the aberrant minds is going to be. So this is going to be kind of our fighting style. This is where we're going to be tackling our core class identity. This is where we're going to be tackling kind of how your psionic control, how your psionic manipulation differs from that of another being of the same class, another sorcerer who also has this sort of aberrant mind enchantment, or force of being. So we could use, as far as different things that I've done in different campaign settings, I've got ideas of words of creation where there are, these sort of psionic concepts, these fundamental sequences where different things are manifest across those different lines. That is an option as far as like where we can go with different stances, different options. We could go with different creatures. We could do an aboleth. We could do a mind flayer. We could do beholders. That would be pretty fun. Especially because, ooh, wait, hang on. Like because the sorcerer has this sort of mutant style to it, where you are, as you're leveling up, you're getting different feats that allow you to kind of transform yourself with the chaotic harmony features, where you get different, physical attributes, different permanent buffs to yourself, to your spellcraft, by becoming more one with, your psionic gift, your psionic energy. We could have, since this is, cosmic horror, this is kind of a body horror thing, like a beholder type creature. Maybe you start getting like eye stalks and have the different random patterns and abilities to cast different rays. Excuse me. Maybe this is the sort of low term progression of an mind flayer type parasite, similar to like a Baldur's Gate 3, where as you level up, you can maybe resist, or you could give in to the darkness, to the dark whims of whatever has implanted its tadpoles within your brain. And you slowly become more of a mind flayer. That would actually be pretty. Hang on. That's pretty sick. And then we always could do like our great old one, our Cthulhu type, our Lovecraftian horrors and abominations. Bonds, servitude, this sort of darkness. That like that's what we really want to do. So I think I've talked myself into that one. So ideally we want to have what? The others have 5 and 7. So if we have, let's start with 5 as the target here. So we have the Ulithic Mind Razors. Once again, definitely not a mind flayer. Can't stress enough. Not a mind flayer. Legally not a mind flayer. We have the Great Old Ones. We have... I mean, we could absolutely do an aboleth. I mean, do we call it out as the aboleth exactly? I mean, because we've said aboleth several times in the actual description of let's stop overthinking it. That's how we get ourselves into trouble. So we have an idea for an aboleth. We have what? I know I was also saying like a beholder. Yeah, absolutely. Obviously we can't say beholder. So I mean, MCDM gets around it because they have the Overmind, which is thick as hell. What would be like Critical Role kind of got around it towards the end of campaign 2 by having Lucian the Neo Somnovum, who was, let's just be real, a tripped out beholder that was, you know, the birth of a new far realm god, and it was awesome. Okay, so I mean, Mind Flayer, great old one, Aboleth, Beholder. What are some of the, like, this feels weird because I usually am the guy in my D&D party who's like, I love, you know, absolutely love aberrations. Hang on 1 second here. All right, so but like what are some of the other classic aberrations? I mean, there are slods. There are. Hang on. You know what? Let's just go to a site that honestly not a huge fan of. I am not a fan of D&D. Monsters, but you know it does its job, and you know we can just kind of look at things here. Aberrant Zealot, Aboleth Legacy, Balhanoth. Okay. Beholders, obviously. Belashira, Burbalang, Burlane, Blue Slot, Brainbreaker. Okay, so it's a Mind Flayer. Aberration, the Breath Drinker, Shadow Dusk, Quadrupod, Choker. Okay, so Cosmic Horror, that could be fucking anything. Choker, Jewel, Cloaker, Dark Mantle, Death Kiss, that's kind of just a beholder again. I mean it's different, but it's not really. Death Slod, so once again, Slods again. Darrow, a bit more on the servitude side. I'm looking for like this giant chaotic. Okay, so we've got Elder Brains, we've got Cephalons, Lumps, Eyemonger. Eyemonger, that's just, I believe that's just another beholder. Flumps, so many flumps. I've got nothing against flumps, but just like, they're not for me. Gibbering Mouth, though that kind of fits more into the cosmic horror kind of great old one. Gith Yankee. Okay, so some Gith Yankee and Gith stuff gets into aberrations. That's cool. I mean, to be fair, I've looking back at, Githyanki history, they are a fork of the human lineage. So honestly, it kind of makes sense that centuries of mutation under the Mind Flayers and, forced breeding that, led to them being Gith. I mean, that is aberration. So, like, I don't know. Greater Starspawn, that's kind of a great old one. Archetype. Grix, Grimlocks. What are... Ooh, the Quarry. Now that, yes. Considering that we do have the Somnix, which is our sort of setting neutral Kalashtar. Yes. Yeah, we could absolutely do something with that. Yeah, setting neutral Quarry. Here, let me see if I've made any notes about the Somnix. Did I come up with a name for anything? The answer being, no, I did not. So that's going to be something that we are going to have to go back to later. Hello, Hoylepa. What are we making? We are designing our own tabletop RPG. Here, one quick second. Boom, there we go. All right. Yeah, no, this is a game that I've been designing called Underkeeper. I've been working on it since January of 2023. And right now it is... I would say that the action economy is complete, but we are working on character classes. We've jumped back and forward a lot between a couple of the different classes that needed to be fleshed out and developed. And then we are also occasionally hitting in on different ancestries and their lore. So right now, what we're working on is a version of the Sorcerer class. Or what we've got the basics of the Sorcerer class. We're working on the subclasses. And so in previous streams, I've done an Inheritance of the Elements, which is this sort of primal connection to nature, very much Avatar The Last Airbender, controlling water, earth, fire, air, and that sort of thing. Then I've also got a strict pyromancer subclass here, where we did the kind of initial choosing of your character path, the primordial spark that you control on the battlefield. And right now, what I'm working on is an aberration-based sorcerer subclass, or at least a first introductory ability, to it, figuring out what some of the different grand cosmic powers are. And so, once again, a lot of this is treading into SRD territory, and so we have to kind of be working within different guidelines of what 5th edition and Wizards of the Coast allow us to use. So, like, we can't use Mind Flayers, so that I already have my own version of them. Great old ones are public domain. Then I was thinking of some of the other ones here. The Aboleth is SRD, and I already have my own unique version of that. Then I was thinking of Beholders and Quarry from the Eberron setting as other ideas that could be sources of power for this sorcerer. But yeah, we're happy to have you. Thank you so much for checking out the stream. All right. So, what do these do? What makes a Mind Flayer's psionic ability different than that of the psionic capabilities of, like, an Aboleth Flash Golem? It's not an aberration. Hang on. I don't, off the top of my head, know what a Flash Golem. Oh, flesh golem. Oh, okay. Hmm. Hmm. I do have an idea of a class kind of coming up that is a bit more of a mechanist. And I could see kind of a flesh golem. Oh, like a recombinant, almost Frankenstein creature where you could build a humanoid hybrid or like hybridize yourself with other things. Like I feel like that could work into there. Now there are elements of that sort of nature built into the base sorcerer class here. Mind Flayer could have their hive mind powers could gather around creating a temporary hive mind. Yes. Like I was thinking that, like, kind of within the lore of my setting here, like, these sort of sorcerers here are going to, like, hang on, I need to focus for a second. Alright, so the sorcerer at its base has this feature called chaotic harmony that allows for different personal and physical transmutative effects to kind of take root in who they are and give them permanent buffs. And so we kind of get these as alternate feats at different levels. And so I'm thinking that a Mind Flayer here, you are slowly becoming something along the lines of, I believe it's called the Ulatarid, where it is a Mind Flayer that will eventually seclude itself to become a new Elder Brain. And so the sorcerers who are connected to this sort of vast psionic web that the Mind Flayers have constructed are eventually going to create new sorcerers who are going to become new nodes for them to have a greater foothold in different times, locations, and places. So yes, absolutely hive mind style powers, creating temporary hive minds, and then also having the ability to progress this sort of sorceress connection and transmutation to become one with the sorceress nature. Absolutely. Um um the other thing is Mind Flayers and lore come from the future. Hive connection to see or predict the future. That is absolutely something that I am keeping in my setting. Mind Flayers come from the future and they are affecting their own creation. And so to create new Mind Flayers by connecting with a sorcerer psionically, they are, furthering their foothold for their eventual empire. Like, it's very much this sort of the hubris of mankind to always seek out new ideas, new information. And that is generally a good thing. But as far as this game goes, one of the things that they find, one of the things that they discover is psionics. And psionics is the language of the Mind Flayers. And psionics creates new Mind Flayers. And so the only way to permanently destroy Mind Flayers is to basically put up this sort of psionic wall so that you can never interact with anything psionic, because otherwise Mind Flayers will happen. And so, yes, absolutely seeing and predicting the future is a good part. It is something that they should be able to do. Um, all right. Great Old Ones. This is your very kind of basic Cthulhu. I'm not like I like the work of Lovecraft. Obviously, the dude himself is a problem. Which makes it the complete opposite of the Aboleth, which are beings that existed before the gods. Yes. Mm-hmm. Now, Aboleth is a little different in my setting, but at the same time, a lot of that core is the same. But yeah, no, they are beings that collect memory with every generation. So, yes, absolutely. The Aboleth is always learning. It is always growing in its secret location. Yeah. Yeah. Like I feel like those two are the ones I have the best idea of. Um, yeah, Beholder. Um, like Beholder and the Quarry kind of options here are a little bit more tied to manifestations and dreams. Makes no sense. Beholder, yeah, I think so. Therefore, I am. Beholders are truly interesting creatures. um, I like because the thing that makes I do like this idea of there being the Beholder as this sort of classic fantasy monster because of D&D. And I think the greatest thing that is about the Beholder is that they are not SRD. Like they are specifically IP that is owned by Wizards of the Coast, and so therefore we can have this sort of idea of this monster. But then whenever we try and create outward from it, we create something that references um like it has to be fundamentally different. We have to keep reinventing it. We reimagine it. We create our own new Beholders. Like you go the Cyclops from the X-Men route, their eyes go crazy. Yup. Oh yeah. Cyclops, love it. I, I didn't used to be an X-Men fan, but like the more I read, the more I learn about them, and just kind of the more I kind of get hyped for X-Men inclusion in like the Marvel movies and such, like the more I like the X-Men. It kind of felt a little dated when I got into it, but like the more I learn about the world, the more I learn about the people in it, the more I learn about like, you know, different social struggles and such. Like, man, the X-Men rock. The X-Men are awesome. And yeah, I do want there to be like X-Men analogs within the game here. Yes. So yeah, Beholders gonna be dream. Well, is it gonna be dream based? Honestly, this could be this sort of wild magic because you know you have the randomness of the eyes. Um, um, Ori are going to be all about manifestations, dreams. they're all going to be about, they will not all, but they're going to be about connecting others via the astral plane. Evil cult of sorcerers give themselves as evolution of civilizations like the Brotherhood of Mutants. Yes. I do have build up for some things similar to that. Like there are elements within the world that are very much able to play off of that. I was doing a lot of world building for the elemental plane of water about a month, maybe two ago, and like a lot of that came with world building about aboleths and such, or in my setting, the aboleth, because there's only one, and it's a mess. It's great. I love it. I love that monster. But it has this sort of city of followers. The city is called Memory, and so absolutely it has these kind of cultists of its presence, and they are absolutely trying to forcibly evolve the presence on this land into becoming more like them, because it will feed on their memory and they will add to the collective. Kind of a very classic aboleth thing. So yeah, no, evil cult of sorcerers absolutely is a thing. That's why I think the aboleth has to show up here. Hmm. Um, uh, uh, hmm. Yes, like the vaguely frustrating thing about aberrations, like, don't get me wrong, I love aberrations. They're probably my favorite type of D&D monster. Is that unfortunately they all kind of get into this similar kind of cosmic horror sense. And once again, I like cosmic horror. I quite like cosmic horror. But there it becomes hard to think of fear of the unknown in 5 different ways without also knowing more about them. And so, like, we have mind flayers, which is this sort of fear of the self-determining prophecy, this fear of the future. We have aboleths, which is this sort of fear of the past, fear of conformity, fear of something that is, I mean, they all have this sort of fear of something overtaking you. We have beholders, which is a fear of chance, a fear of randomness, a fear of control. Because, like, if a beholder could, like, perfectly control its mind, it could manifest whatever it needs. Then we have great old ones, which are just what? Fear itself? Fear... Like it becomes hard to... Fear of to be... Ooh, hang on. Fear of to be unknown. Ooh. Like... Hang on. That... Fear of to be unknown. The first thing that I think of when you say that is... There's this... You know... It's not a real D&D monster. But... It has kind of permeated the space. It is this sort of Exactly. The stronger the sorcerer gets is how it's harder to remember. This sort of false hydrate. Exactly. Where the more powerful you get, the more you kind of disappear into obscurity. Where this sort of blank void. Yes. More they dip into obscurity. Or Forget Me Not from the X-Men. Fair. Once again, I'm still growing as an X-Men fan, but I'm going to bookmark that because I want to learn more about that. Okay. So we have fear of being and becoming unknown. The stronger the sorcerer is, the more they dip into obscurity and arcana. Messing with the concept of memory in targets and modify memory. Yes. Okay. I think we've got a good list here. All right. So, once again, this is going to be something that a character is going to choose at level 1. And so it's going to be informed by this sort of meta decision by the player as to what's psionic and aberrant mind. What is a quarry? Quarry come from Eberron. They are creatures of dreams. They are this sort of on one hand, the shorthand answer of this is it's sort of like a venom, in that they are this symbiote that connects and attaches to creatures, but they are creatures of dreams that are connecting, manipulating, and speaking out as different presences within the world. And that's where we get ancestries like the Kalashtar, which is a humanoid bonded with this quarry who has, enhanced dreams of the astral plane, enhanced dreams of perhaps things to come or things that may come. And so I want to represent that here because I quite like the idea of them. But once again, Quarry are not officially SRD, so I have to create my own version of them, and I don't know enough about their lore just quite yet. But as we continue working through this, we're going to find out more about what my settings Quarry are going to look like, because SRD publishing. Okay. Yes. Okay, so all right. Let's go ahead and just kind of start. Exactly, my own legally distinct version. If you squint at it, it definitely does look like it, but the serial number has been filed off. Something that I am able to own, because if I specifically put the word quarry in my book, that is IP infringement on something that Wizards of the Coast owns. And so that just cannot happen. But, I can talk about... I can't say the word Kalashtar, but I can say Somnix. Somnix being my own version of this synthetic hybrid between creature of the dream realm, creature of the far reaches, who has this connection to a humanoid being. Wizard of the Coast got, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Like exactly. Like Batman, that's not our product, but Lego Batman, yes. But even then, now we can do licensing in between. It's yeah, but like Mind Flayers are part of Wizards of the Coast's IP. I cannot say Mind Flayer no matter what. Like Stranger Things was able to get away with it because they did partnerships with Wizards of the Coast, but also their Mind Flayer was wildly different as this sort of cosmic entity. So even if they couldn't do it, makes with copyright lawsuits than actual. That doesn't necessarily surprise me, unfortunately. But yeah, no, the thing is, I don't want to run the risk of poking the bear because here, let me just pull up the PDF here. Okay. Yeah. See here. Where is the exact kind of? There's a whole list of things in here. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So you are subject and conditions to conditions set forth in Section 7 of the OGL and are not open content. So you can't say you can't specifically do Dungeons and Dragons. You can't call your product that. You can't call it D&D, Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master, Monster Manual, D20 System, Wizards of the Coast. Sorry. You also cannot use proper names, including those used in the names of spells or items, places. You can't use Underdark, Red Wizard of Thay, the City of Union, Heroic Domains of Isgard, the ever-changing chaos of Limbo, the windswept depths of Pandemonium, the infinite layers of the Abyss, the Tartarian depths of Carceri, the grey wastes of Hades, the bleak eternity of Gehenna, the 9 hells of Bator, the infernal battlefield of Acheron, clockwork nirvana of Mechanus, peaceable kingdoms of Arcadia, 7 mounting heavens of Celestia, twin paradises of Bitopia, blessed fields of Elysium, wilderness of the Beastlands, Olympian glades of Arborea, concordant domains of the Outlands, Sigil, the Lady of Pain, the Book of Exalted Deeds, Book of Vile Darkness, Beholder, Goth, Carrion Crawler, Tenari, Batezu, Displacer Beast, Githyanki, Githzerai, Mind Flayer, Illithid, Umber Hulk, and Yuan Ti. Like, on one hand, like, a lot of that is just them protecting their IP, what they own. But on the other hand, like, there are elements of this that are, rooted in culture that is just human. Like, sure, I can't use, the Olympian glades of Arborea, but I can do something that is based on Mount Olympus. And so they have similar things, they have similar names, but because I'm basing it on something that is actually mythologic that is within the public domain, it is exempt from here. But I can't take one of Wizards of the Coast settings and just fully repackage it for my own. And so that's where I get into a bit of the things here that we were talking about with, Mind Flayers, Illithids, Beholders. You can't call it a beholder, but to look at another company that did something similar to this, MCDM, they have the Overmind, which, it sure looks like a beholder. It behaves similar to a beholder, but it is distinctly and legally not a beholder. And so they are able to kind of get away with that. They are able to create their own monster in the image of a beholder. And so that is something that I'm going to have to do here. Same with Mind Flayers, and the like. But yes. So I'm mostly just keeping that here as there is a small difference. You can patent name twist. The Lady of Pain can be patented. Exactly. Like those two things don't necessarily have an inherent overlap. But if I create a character called the Lady of Pain who rules over a, city of doors and gates and, commands multiversal travel for all sorts of people who are coming in and out, maybe they'd have a case because, that's just plane shift. Like, I've got that stuff right. Oh, maybe not that here, but I've got like the plane shift stuff right here. Like, you can't do it. That is their copyright. But like, sure, a sex worker or something like that could call themselves the Lady of Pain, and Wizards of the Coast isn't going to go after that because that is fundamentally a difference of identity. Man, yeah. So yeah. So yeah, Aboleth, we're all good. False Hydra, we're all good. That is a kind of cultural meta myth, creepypasta sort of thing. Ulithic Mind Razors, legally distinct from Mind Flayers and Illithids, we're good there. Beholder, need to come up with a new name, need to come up with a new identity, but we can still do something with that idea. Ori, need to come up with, same as the Beholder, we need to come up with new ideas and new identities, but we can use the same concept as of a creature from the dream realms who bond with humans and create psionic connections and manifestations of creation from ideas of dreams, ideas of emotional integrity and volatility. That stuff's all good. So what we are working on here is this sort of fighting style where we choose our connection, our connection to some sort of otherworldly being for this sorcerer subclass, and how those psionics inherently dictate differences in gameplay. So, kind of from the top here, Mind Flayers, or, are legally distinct Mind Flayers. I'm just going to say Mind Flayers because everyone knows what a Mind Flayer is. It just will be different in the final, text to print. Hive mind connections, creating temporary hive minds and connections with others. So, a psionic manifestation here would be when you deal psychic damage to a target. How do your psychic damages affect things differently? Could this? I mean, because right now what I'm thinking of is our connection to primordial fire here, where it is all very attack focused. However, these different stances we could just do support things as well. So like the Mind Flayer here, we could just say, you have telepathy to 60 feet, and you can share ideas with other beings who share a language with you. Would that be something that people would find useful on the same scale as bonuses to damage? Okay. Well, Sorceress Investitures don't inherently require verbal, somatic, or material components because they can't be counterspelled. Therefore, building that into here wouldn't necessarily change that. Okay. So, Mind Flayers here. You can communicate telepathically with a number of creatures up to your spellcraft modifier. Number of creatures within 60 feet of yourself up to your spellcraft modifier. So, Dangerous Mind. If someone tries mind reading, they get... I do like that. This sort of psionic feedback. I do like that. Additionally, when another creature tries to communicate telepathically with you, you can choose to deal an amount of psychic damage to the target. Alright, yeah. If a mind flare exposes itself because it gets brain damage, that would be... I mean, that is something that definitely can happen here. When you deal damage in this manner, you learn the nature of the target creature as well as its location, provided it is within a what would be a reasonable range here? What, maybe... Honestly, I think this would probably cap out at like a mile. Within 1 mile of you. Learn the nature of it as well as its location, provided it is within 1. Honestly, then we can actually, if we just, since this is a passive effect here, I feel like we should tie the range of our telepathy to our range of discovery. So you can communicate telepathically with a number of creatures of your choice. Within 60 feet of yourself. Within 1 mile of yourself, up to your spellcraft modifier. Then additionally here, okay. So therefore we have this sort of, we can send out connections. We can bridge this gap here. However, I think we can also do this as a level up thing. When you reach 4th level, the creatures you make connections with in this manner can communicate with one another telepathically. Also communicate with one another telepathically without involving you. So therefore we have this burgeoning hive mind. Hello, Gift of Gabby. I'm doing great today. I hope you're doing well as well. So you can communicate telepathically number of creatures up to your spellcraft modifier. So I'm imagining this as an adventuring party. So you have a team of, let's say, 4 other people, and then this sorcerer. So then you can communicate with all 4 of them so long as they're within a mile of you. When you reach 4th level, then the cleric can talk to the berserker telepathically, provided they're still within a mile radius of you. Okay, so that's a good, thing to tie up there. Additionally, when another creature tries to communicate telepathically with you, you can choose to deal an amount of psychic damage to the target. Deal damage in this manner. You'll learn the nature of them. Boom. Yes, I think that is going to be our Mind Flayer style ability here. All right. All right. False Hydra. Okay, so fear of the loss of identity, fear of loss of self, erasing yourself from the minds and memories of your targets. Okay, so when you deal damage to... When you deal psychic damage to another target, another creature. I mean, hang on. We're going to be dealing a lot of psychic damage with this class here. So if we deal a lot of psychic damage with this archetype here, what we run into the capability of is, you're going to be forgotten no matter what. So do we tie this to psychic damage, or do we tie this to something else? I think we tie it to psychic damage. Because we don't have a damage over time psychic drain effect. Though that would be a really cool idea here. I'm just going to make a note of that. So when you deal psychic damage to another creature, int save on a crit, perhaps. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, my game doesn't quite have saving throws, and it also doesn't quite have crits. However, there are analogs to both. Actually, hang on a second. What I can do here is I kind of invented this sort of backdoor kind of push and pull mechanic with Witchfire here. So when you deal fire damage to an opponent that has the DOT Incinerate condition, the target creature gains the condition Baned until the start of their next turn. And so that's just a minus 1d4 to their attack rolls, to their ability checks, and all of that sort of thing. Then if the target creature casts a spell while they're Baned, then the Bane condition kind of becomes this lingering curse. So we could probably do something similar here with this False Hydra, where it starts out as this small thing. When you deal psychic damage to another creature, I mean, you can reduce memories are forgotten if the False Hydra eats them. So biting psychic damage could happen. Yes. But the way I'm thinking of this is like, oh wait, Okay, I think we're going on a little bit of a journey here, because I feel like we're talking about two different things, but both of them are cool. So the way I was thinking of this is this sort of false Hydra sorcerer. At first level, they are erasing themselves from other people's minds, and that's kind of what I was going for like this sort of stealth build. However, what you're saying here actually is more in the line of what the false Hydra actually is, destroying other creatures and then having them slowly be forgotten. And I mean, not just thinking of the false Hydra, the first thing that I think of with that is MCDM's game Draw Steel. Because I was when they were doing their launch for this game, they had no. I like your ideas here. It wasn't what I was thinking, but it's cool. And so like okay. Let me go to my books here. Where did I keep that? There we go, books. Okay, and we'll bring back the other document here. Draw Steel, yes, or Rulebook Heroes. So what I want to go to here is classes. Is this? I believe it's the null 10th level features. So this gives me a bit of a story to tell, really someone else's story from this game's development here. So as a part of the live stream for this game when it was coming out, Willie, who was one of the designers of this class, the Null, was talking about what he imagined to be the canonical destruction of this of the main villain of this game, being Ajax the Invincible Overlord. And his idea here was that the final way to defeat Ajax is to use the Null's ability here, Realitas. It costs 11 discipline, with being the Null's heroic resource here. You attack them, deals 7 to 13 plus your agility psychic damage, and then can daze the target. Just basically conditions of the book there, of the game there. While dazed in this way, the target takes psychic damage equal to twice your intuition score at the start of each of your turns. If this ability causes a creature who is not a leader or solo creature to become winded, they are instead reduced to 0 stamina. So, hit 0, you die. Any creature reduced to 0 stamina by this ability is forgotten by all creatures of your level or lower in the timescape, who are not present at the encounter. Loved ones of the forgotten creature retain a faint sense of melancholy. This effect can only be reversed at the director's discretion. So you are basically removing a creature from the multiversal chaos of this. And so what Willie was talking about is that is how you defeat, or in his mind, how you fully defeat and eradicate their big boss guy. If I go back here to page number 1 here, yeah, Ajax here is this guy here. So the only way to truly defeat him, per the developer of that class, is to erase him from all existence. And so I think that is something that we could actually build into this idea of the Sorcerer, where we maybe have an investiture that you can only pick if you take this sort of sorceress connection for lack of a better term, earlier on. So when you deal psychic damage to another creature, like first we start off by just like erasing ourselves from your memory. But as we level up, as we, become more and more transfixed and become more transmuted into this sort of aberrant being, we slowly start to erase other people. Maybe the memory of our party starts to either fade around, or we can control other creatures' memory or ability to remember who we are if it would, negatively impact us. We can get into places that are more stealthy. And then slowly we can just start to remove people when we destroy them, when we deal psychic damage to them, or when we, to use your phrasing there, crit against them, they make an intelligence save, and then on a success or failure, they no longer exist. I feel like that is a good progression path. Hiding ourselves to, draw forward and then slowly erase other people. And like once again, we have mechanics built into the sorcerer class here that can kind of be read as you are a burgeoning villain. And so like I think that that's a very good idea. I think that might be the way to do it, because erasing target creatures from existence, from memory, at level 1 is a bit strong as far as flavor goes. But deal psychic damage to another creature, because the thing here with the Witchfire is it has a secondary condition here, where you can just deal fire damage to them and it's going to do normal fire damage stuff. But when you deal fire damage to them and they have this second condition, then more stuff happens. So what would be a secondary condition to tie to this sort of forgetfulness? That could be dazed. What would make someone more prone to forgetfulness, prone to sort of thing? We could do Baned, but Baned doesn't really show up a ton as far as the core rule books. Like it is a condition that's thrown around a lot by spells and spell-like effects. Blinded could thematically work. Charmed, you attack a charmed creature with psychic damage and then you slowly erase yourself from their memory. I do like Charmed. Dazed, yeah. Just kind of impaired or confused. Frightened, obviously. We've got Cosmic Horror here. I think we can go with... I think let's go with Fright. Because... could also go with raising intelligence temporary if the sorcerer eats a living creature. Yes. True. Reverse presentation. You're allowed to roll presentation again to be forgotten. Because like we do have a presence skill, and that is tied to your spellcraft here. So if you're attacking someone with your spellcraft, with your presence, and I think that that's kind of already here, and so I want to try and avoid doing Okay, so when you deal psychic damage to an opponent that has the frightened condition, the target creature is inflicted with a curse that will remove your character, your presence, remove all memory of your character. No, hang on. Cause them to forget your character. A token of memory. You create a small object that makes the user immune to your own class abilities. Yes. We do want to make sure that this isn't accidentally going to throw friendly fire. I mean, on one hand, that would be dramatic. Token of memory. Makes the user. Yeah. It's inflicted to forget character presence within a number days equal to your spellcraft modifier. As the memory is slowly drained, the target creature might lose sharper details. The target creature would lose memory of significant features of your character appearance first, and then before slowly losing memory of their presence and deeds within the combat encounter when they were cursed, before fully forgetting their existence entirely towards the completion of the erasure. So like they have 5 days. 5 being kind of an estimate as far as what a reasonable. Actually, that would probably be a higher spellcraft modifier would be. If the target creature continues to interact with you outside of interact with you after being cursed, the effects of the mental erasure may be mitigated at your game master's discretion. There we go. So that kind of gives similarly, these effects can be negated through the use of a remove curse spell affecting the target creature before the curses duration before the end of there we go. So that way we have our enemies forgetting us. Therefore, we also have the ability for perhaps a little bit of a friendly fire thing if we have a spell effect that gets thrown around, since it's already just triggering off of the frightened condition, which will show up with more monsters. Therefore, we also have a way to counteract this curse by just, casting the remove curse spell, but also just by being near them and kind of continuing to remind them of our presence. And that can be handled narratively within the session by the GM. As far as how far that goes, how far the characters have history or relation or connection. Well, also, technically, it does give the GM an out, where if an enemy escapes a combat encounter, they might be able to get a remove curse in order to fully remember the party and their abilities, rather than having one member of the party be just kind of a blank space in their memory. Okay, but I think that is a good kind of starting place as far as a memory control sort of ability there. So yeah, so it's crowd control, but in the form of this sort of backwards psionic nature. We should also just go ahead and make a note here as far as future stuff. And creatures from memories of others. There we go. Okay. Yes. So yeah. Absolutely. Okay. You go have fun. Holiepa, thank you so much for tuning in. Your ideas have been absolutely fantastic, and it's been great getting to talk through different things with you. I hope you had a great time today, and I hope you continue to go have fun and a wonderful rest of your day. Take care. All right. So, continuing onward here. We have the Aboleth. The Aboleth being a creature beneath the waves of the realm of primordial water, a creature that is the fused mass of flesh and ruler of the city of memory, from the temporal shunt of Erasetum Station. That's a lot of proper nouns. Should I tell the story? Should I go back all the way and kind of... Yeah, sure. Why not? I've got the time. Everything's good. So, the aboleth in my setting, its origins are that of a different game. So like D&D has Star Frontiers, Pathfinder has Starfinder, Underkeeper, the RPG I'm working on right now, I have a setting that is an evolution of the setting that is, several thousand years in the future, and I'm currently just kind of calling it Beyond. But that is going to be the kind of sci-fi version of this game. And so, one thing that is going to happen in probably an adventure using the Beyond framework is that there is this space station, probably towards the outer reaches of the prime manifold of our Earth-like creature, Earth-like existence. This could be, light years away from actual Earth or our actual Earth analog within the setting, but it's on manifold. And so things go down, and they end up displaced. Now, what was going on at Araceta beforehand? They were doing experiments into the limits of human capabilities, cognition, prescience, and that sort of thing. They were trying to tackle what actual magic would look like in a sci-fi setting. And actual magic in a sci-fi setting is typically psionics. And so what they tap into is the psionic weave. What they tap into is this sort of nature that is created by the Mind Flayers for use in translating information from their future origins to all of the other Mind Flayers that exist past and present. And so through this connection, they learn information about how this translation of information across different time frames works. And through this, they design blueprints, schematics, allowing them in a time of need to hopefully translate their station and the people who are there into information and shunt themselves backwards in time, perhaps a couple of days, maybe even a week, in order to better prepare and adapt and fight off a series of extraterrestrial threats that might come about. And so, we jump back into the story of a time of need, a period of desperation in which the station is besieged by alien foes. And in this time of need, they activate their temporal shunt, meant to only ricochet them backwards in time a brief week, a couple of days, perhaps even a couple of hours. But, as things tend to do in sci-fi settings, there are malfunctions, there are errors. Maybe some of the information that they got or extracted from this psionic weave, extracted from this nature of history, this historical psionic connection that has always been, is faulty. And so they end up transporting Aracetum Station to a planet known as Ionok. Now, Ionok is known in the setting of Underkeeper. This is my fantasy RPG. This is the fantasy RPG that setting that will eventually have sci-fi elements to it as we progress thousands of years forward. Once again, a la Star Frontiers, a la Starfinder. And so, Aracetum Station crashes down onto this planet, onto this world of water, this land where life is still in its early stages, where it is still developing, where it is still fighting for its own place within the cosmos. And as a byproduct of this, the people of Aracetum Station are changed. They are bled together into this sort of amalgam mass, the first Leviathan of Ionok. They are the Aboleth. And as far as visuals go for this, a lot of what I'm thinking here is similar to the eel creature from Markiplier's movie Iron Lung. Hang on, let me see if I can get a way to blow this up that is not gonna be being displayed right where chat is. Give me 1 second. Image a new tab. Image a new tab. You there. Image in new tab. And image in new tab. There we go. Yeah, something along the lines of this, where it is this creature that has, limbs and bones that are formed all the way down its body, that are reaching out at all different points, that is this sort of amalgam mass of every living being who was on and was displaced alongside Ericitum's station. And this creature will and has lived underneath the waters of Ionok, within the trenches, as tectonic plates shift around and release gases into the atmosphere, into the waters, making it much more of a hostile, but also able for life. Like, the heat down there is going to burn and affect these creatures. It's going to, cause different chemical reactions within and around them. But at the same time, it is also changing the nature of the water, changing the nature of the atmosphere, of the environment, where creatures can then live, where there can be more biodiversity. And so this is where the Aboleth lives. This is where it exists, where it consumes. And what it is the memories of all of these all of these humanoid beings who don't yet exist in the main time. All of these creatures, all of these people, it has all of their faces, it has all of their arms, their legs, their ligaments, all of this molten flesh that has formed this long eel-like creature that has the brains of all of this memory, all of this scientific information. And it is here, living at the bottom of an ocean, a world of oceans. And it is wanting to grow in power. It is wanting to be remembered as what it truly was. And so that is the idea of the Aboleth. It is affecting life from a fundamental level as it develops on this land. It has abilities that are true to its lair in the trench, but also natural phenomena that will sweep through and around the oceans of Ionok. It will, slowly begin to convert and pollute and corrupt the life that is on that is in the waters, and they will slowly become its servants. To use the D&D analog, the scum. These different beings that are similar to the Aboleth, where they have these fractal vestigial limbs that break off from one another, where they have faces growing into their own, where as the memories of all of these lost astronauts, cosmonauts, and cathonauts are flooding into their memory and fracturing their sense of identity. That is what the aboleth in my setting does. So yeah. That is kind of the first Leviathan, the dragon of the realm of primordial water. It comes from a sci-fi setting. And so, I have other streams where I talk about when we world builded different elements of this land, different elements of the realm of water. But a lot of that comes back to this story of the aboleth and its beginnings out in the far reaches of space. So, in order to have a sorcerer who is drawing its mental acuity, its mental powers, its sorceress spark from this creature, from the aboleth. I mean, obviously it is getting a connection to the Mind Palace and the City of Memory. It can learn about different elements of the aboleth's followers, of its history. But once again, that's just nature to my setting. Aboleths are collectors of information throughout all of D&D's canon and a lot of the other deuterocanonical works of Dungeons & Dragons and other RPGs of its sort. As the aboleth is not a part of the system reference document or what is copyrighted by Wizards of the Coast, it can show up in anything because it is in the SRD, which means it can be used anywhere else. It is not inherently copyrighted by them. That's what I meant to say. And so this idea of a creature that is both simultaneously a god that has perhaps fallen off in D&D history and is just this collection, this memory palace of books and lore, like that is evocative. So to have a sorcerer who is drawing on their power, I think do we give them? I mean, we could give them water breathing as a basic feature. Once again, because aboleths are always tied to either the elemental plane of water, the realm of primordial water, or something of that sort, due to them being kind of fish gods. But also, once again, we want them to have this sort of memory palace ability, so we could give advantages, we could give bonuses on history checks. We could do something with the secret stat. It's not really that much of a secret in my game, but of chronets, of one's connection to one's own timeline. We could have concordance, lore, and history. Okay, so that's going to be kind of... I'm thinking that's how we connect to this Mind Palace. So you can breathe naturally underwater. A fun little bonus mutation there. When you make a history, intellect, lore, chronets, or charisma. Oh no, sorry. Or do we want to do this as concordance? Maybe we want to do this as religion. Here, let's go ahead and pull up our list of skills in the RPG here. Core rulebook 1 here. Where are you? There we go. Your character's skills. So we have acrobatics, animal handling, arcana. I mean, once again, this is a sorcerer, so arcana could work. Concordance, ability to connect and interact with the nature of reality and beings beyond it. That's very much this. Deception, perhaps. Diplomacy, dungeoneering, endurance, history, obviously. Insight, investigation, lore, yes. Medicine, nature, navigation, perception, performance, presence. Presence, it's a sorcerer. Religion, sanity. I mean, I feel like sanity, no, because the sorcerer is slowly being broken down in its mental state by this collective mind of the aboleth, and so you are slowly being broken down and added into different parts of the memory palace. So I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to go about that there. Yeah, no, history, lore, and concordance. I think those are that is a perfectly fine cocktail here. Or concordance. Cronance. Ability. When you make an ability challenge that uses your history, lore, or cronance skill proficiencies, you can what? Okay, so we could do reference. Okay. Open your mind to the aboleth's influence and call upon the histories, call upon the collected history of the city to aid in your recollection and application of knowledge. I'm betting that that's a run-on sentence here. Open your mind to the aboleth's influence. That, yeah, let's just make that a period there, because that's going to be that. Boom. So then we can change this to when you call upon the collected history of the city of memory to aid in your recollection and application of knowledge, the result of your ability challenge is what? Do we have this be a sort of thing where it increases the result by one tier? Do we increase your proficiency down? Is bolstered. A creature who is proficient in with these skills can roll a d12 instead of their current proficiency. When a creature who is proficient with the requisite the associated skill who is proficient with this can roll a d12. Additionally, you can expend one of your unspent hit dice to increase the result of your challenge by 1 tier. Once per challenge, you can expend one of your unspent hit dice to increase the result of your challenge by 1 tier. There we go. Alright. When you the a creature who is proficient with the associated skill. Okay, so there we go. There is kind of the basics of tuning into this sort of Aboleth memory palace. When you make an ability challenge that uses your history, lore, or concordance skill proficiencies, you can open your mind to the Aboleth's influence. When you make the ability challenge, you call upon the collected history of the City of Memory. A creature who is proficient with the associated skill can roll a d12 instead of their current proficiency die. Additionally, once per challenge, you can expend one of your unspent hit dice to increase the result of your challenge by 1 tier. Okay, there we go. Honestly, I think I'm just going to get rid of the you can breathe naturally underwater just because it kind of feels a bit out of place here, and that will be something that you can choose as a part of the chaotic harmony feature as a part of the base sorcerer class. Here, give me 1 quick second. I'm gonna grab a drink of water or something, and I will be right back. But I just need to clear my throat for 1 quick second. All right, let's go ahead and jump right back into it here. All right. All right, so we've got the aboleth done there. So, what we want to jump into here, what we want to tackle is a setting neutral beholder. Now, beholders are interesting. They are, everyone's favorite kind of one eye in the center, multiple eye stalks around the head sort of dungeon crawling creature. They have randomization involved in that the effects of their eye stalks come about at a roll of a d8, and so what you've got is, it's a creature of chaos. So. We have some thematic things here. There is a motif of a many-eyed creature here. We could do something with clairvoyance. We could do something with. We could do something with randomness. We could have a bit of a sort of wild magic nature to a beholder-kin style, whatchamacallit, sorcerer here. I want to try and think a little, kind of try and open my mind, think, and focus in on what the goal here is. So beholders are what? Like they exist because they dream and imagine a new beholder. They're creatures of psionic potential. Beholders are also typically, building out layers and dungeons. One, because they have a disintegration eye, so that they can easily carve tunnels and pathways for themselves. They also have abilities that they have this sort of megalomaniacal mind that allows them to assert control over others, but also to fuel this sort of constant paranoia within themselves. And so, beholder dungeons are crafted out of paranoia. It's sort of like a Winchester mansion sort of thing, where is there something that we can do there with this sort of eggshells upon eggshells, layers of an onion sort of thing, where a sorcerer who is chosen by, created by, in the image of a beholder, like what they would be like, what their sort of magics and their nature would cause them to be like. And I get there is the thematic nature of growing eye stalks or having other limbs, and we can do that with chaotic harmony. And And I mean, we will. That will be an option. The thing is, though, like at an early level, how do we evoke this? How do we evoke this nature? Like aboleths, we can tap into the Mind Palace. We can get advantages and bonuses when we make history checks and attempt to knowledge things. Mind flayers, we can set up a network of telepathy and just telekinetic communication, and then we can establish those same bounds within other people as we level up. With our sort of false Hydra forgetfulness, it is all kind of this narrative thing of our enemies forget us and therefore will kind of, if they get away, they can underestimate us. And so like that's controlling the narrative around yourself and your party. So a beholder is less chaotic. It's not taking a scalpel to the idea of dreams. It's not shaping them. It's creating, it is existing within this sphere of randomness. It is existing within this sphere of chaos and this sort of chaotic potential. So, Beholder Sorcerer, chaotic potential, idea of wild magic. I mean, that's the thing. That is the thing. What we could do like different types of sight. I mean, after all, we have dark vision, we have infravision, we have tremor sense, we have true sight. We have all of these different ways to perceive the world around us, but at the same time, that's not necessarily something that is core to a beholder fight, necessarily. Creatures that serve a beholder usually do so out of fear. Fear of the beholder's massive kind of cosmic powers and potential. Because like I want this to be cool. I want this to be flavorful. I want this to be unique. Beholders are a control. What if we go with a sense of balance here? Could we start to remove or increase randomness? So maybe whenever you would have a flat bonus, you can instead replace that with a die roll, or whenever you have a die roll, you can replace that with a flat bonus. You can set skill floors, or you can remove skill floors. That would be, quite frankly, a lot. Interesting. What if we could just do a, standard probability manipulation? We were talking about this with earlier with the Mind Flayer. Like, what would happen if they kind of look forward into the future and can kind of react based on that? So, I mean, since the psionic weave exists both directions temporally, maybe we could do something along that line, but like the mechanic for that would be something akin to a divination wizard's portent dice. Now, portent dice don't exactly exist in the same mechanics in my game here, but they do have a place. And similarly, we can negate some of their effects here. So, because our game is a 2d12 system, so what if a Beholderkin Sorcerer? That's okay. I actually genuinely hate that phrasing there, but like a sorcerer who is connected to the mind and mentality and charisma of a beholder, may be created in their image, can manipulate the chaos on the field through foreknowledge. Maybe this is where we introduce like the style of portent dice, where you can at the start of the day roll, let's say, 3d12s, and as you're going about your business here, you can start to interrupt different actions and replace d12s from either yours or other creatures' dice pools with some of the d12s from before. You are both increasing chaos, but also exerting your own control over it. You are controlling it in your mind and your image in such a way that a beholder would create its dungeon to both exist rationally within its own mind, but also to exist irrationally, as in fear of the others, fear of being slain, fear of losing knowledge and existence that was brought about by its own dream. Yes, I think that might be the way to go here. And then since we have these dice as a resource, maybe we can consume them for other things. Maybe we can consume one of them to get clairvoyance or true sight for like a minute. I think that is our level 1 direction to go here. Okay, so beholder. Hang on, let me go ahead and pull up a reference over on another monitor here. Okay. So, glimpses of the... You influence the creation and control over your environments. How do we phrase this? Oh boy, hang on a second. Okay. Sorry, my monitor here is all of a sudden glitching out. And so all of my stuff is getting thrown around here. Give me one quick second as I get everything organized back to where it belongs. Of course that's right here. Why wouldn't it be? That makes no sense whatsoever. Okay. I think we can work with this here. Okay. So, as a conduit for the chaos, as a conduit for the chaos of an overmind, we'll just say, you manipulate the probability of the world around you in accord with your will and your vision. Because eyes, it's vision. It's a little bit of a pun, a little bit of a joke. Have some fun with it. All right. So as a conduit for the chaos of an overmind, you manipulate the probability of the world around you in accord with your vision. When you complete a long rest, you create a number of, what do we call this? Do we call this like an interdiction, an interjection, a like it is the nature of this sort of multi-dimensional mind. Oh man, why is my everything no? Okay, I don't. No, I do still want. Sorry, my screen to the right of me is appearing as though it is haunted. And so it is choosing of its own free accord to throw all of my windows that are on it to my other monitors, which I would rather them not be. So give me 1 second once again as I restore my setup to a decent vestige of common sense. All right. Hopefully I can just keep it there because it had issues as I brought over 4 consecutive windows, but you know, we'll just stay with 3. And it should be perfectly fine, I'd hope. Alright. So as a conduit for the chaos of an overmind, you manipulate the probability of the world around you in accord with your vision. When you complete a long rest, you create a number of slivers of potentiality, slivers of chaos, a number of visions, equal to your spellcraft modifier. If you have any levels of fatigue, you reduce the number of visions you create by the level of fatigue, by your level of fatigue to a minimum of 1. For each vision you create, roll a d12 and record the number rolled. You can replace the result of a d12 used in any core dice roll made by you or a creature you can see. With one of these recorded visions. Okay, so basically what we're doing here is we're creating the Wizard's Portent Dice mechanic here from 5th edition in order to create this idea of a beholder manipulating the chaos of the world around them to realize something of their own, to exert their own sense of control and chaos over it. And so spellcraft modifier, so that's we're going to assume a spellcraft modifier of about 3 or 4, and then realistically you're probably not going to be having levels of fatigue once you complete a long rest. So we take that idea here, that 3 visions roughly, and then like maybe you have 1, so that's going to be 2 visions then instead, to a minimum of 1. So you're always going to get 1. You're always going to get 1. That's the important part here. 1 big eye on the beholder. For each vision you create, you roll a d12, and then you can use these d12s in place of other d12s used throughout combat. And so that way you can either perhaps increase safely the rolls of your allies or yourself as you cast different investitures. You can manipulate the result that way. Of one of these recorded visions. Now, granted, it is still going to be, the challenge is still resulted, and it is still partially affected by chaos, by the actual roll of the dice, because your core die roll is 2d12s. So the beholder can change the effect of one of them. So it can turn a maximum roll of like a 24, where you have 2 12s, into a roll of a 13 by changing out one of the 12s for a 1. You can't get rid of both of them. You can't force a critical failure in that way, but you can exert control over the battlefield. You can exert control over this sort of chaos with one of these recorded visions. So, hang on. Once per turn, you can place the result of any 1d12 used in any core die roll made by you, creature you can see with one of these recorded visions. Each vision result can only be used once. You lose all all used visions when you complete a long rest. Additionally, you can so you can consume these visions. You can clarify this idea of the future. You can take this sight, this future sight, you can remove them, you can condense them, and you can give yourself true sight. You can additionally, as a minor action on your turn, do we make this a minor action? Yes. I think we do need to make this an action here. You can condense unspent visions into the ability to see beyond the veil. See with the eyes of your aberrant patron, your aberrant power source, your aberrant spark, your connection to the ethereal plane. Of your aberrant sorcery. Um, when a sorcerer of the hang on. What's the wording here? You may expend one of your unspent visions to grant yourself dark vision at a range of 60 feet for the next minute. You may also choose to expend. What do we do this as just 2 visions? Because once again, this is, you can generate probably 3 to 4 of them. So we could just have this be 1 and 3. We could have this as 1 and 2. Beholders typically fly, so it wouldn't make sense to have an ability that grants like tremor sense. We can maybe do 1 as dark vision, 2 as infravision, and then 3 as whatchamacallit, true sight. But at the same time, is infravision better or more useful than dark vision? That's the question for the ages, right? So maybe we do one vision here grants you infravision, 2 grants you dark vision, and 3 grants you true sight. I think that seems pretty reasonable here, because infravision is getting you heat signatures. Which would evolve more naturally? Dark vision or infravision? I mean, infravision is kind of what snakes have. Dark vision is kind of what cats have. Dark vision is more common as a thing that is given out than vision, so we'll keep dark vision at 1. Choose to may expend a number of visions to grant supernatural sight. Let's just put a table here, because that's gonna be that's just gonna be easy here. Insert table. We only need 2 columns, 3 rows, and maybe a header. All right. Visions expended. And then supernatural sight. 1 vision. 2 visions. 3 visions. Alright. You gain dark vision at a range 30 feet for the next minute. And then, so this is going to be the same for infravision and true sight. This is basically 1 encounter per day you would get true sight or dark vision or infravision. Okay. in a range of 30 feet for the next. Okay, there we go. Hang on. Well, for one, we said 60 feet. So let's just go ahead and buff. Well, no, hang on. Let's keep True Sight at 30 feet. Because True Sight is much more powerful. It allows you to peer into the ethereal plane. So, like, that's more. Then range of 60 feet. And since they're all for the next minute, we can get rid of that and just include that in the core text of the ability. Grant supernatural sight to grant yourself for the next minute. Lasting 1 minute. That's, once again, got to be consistent here. 1 minute. Grant yourself a supernatural sight. The different types of sight you can gain can be found on the table below. There we go. Is. Why can't it is? Alright, then this here, as far as just, once again, let's just go for formatting here. We want light gray 1 here, basic gray, light gray 3, then we remove borders here. There we go. And then we can also just kind of move this one here to about a 2. Once again, we're going to do a lot more of this formatting in Affinity Publisher when we actually like go to get this ready for publication, but like as far as just being in a Google Doc, I do still want it to look nice. All right, so that is the Beholder. Well, once again, we're going to need to come up with a name, a kind of backstory and lore for it, but like what a Beholder Sorcerer can do with their basic abilities at first level. Like you can start to manipulate the chaos around. Alright, and so our final one here that we have, wow, we've been going for like 3 hours already just talking about this. Hell yeah. Is what in Eberron is the quarry. And so these here would be kind of the memory creatures of the Maria Astra, of the Shattered Seas. Creatures who are holding in their memory things that are forgotten by the mortals of this world. And so what we can do there is we can... My initial idea here is to convert items into dreams. Maybe this would be something similar to like the wrist pocket spell from Guide to Wildmount, Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, or perhaps something like whatchamacallit? Oh my gosh. It's not the Hexblade Warlock. It is the Pact of the Blade Warlock, where you can summon the blade to your hand, shunting it from an extra dimensional space. And so we can maybe dream of items and they will show up around us. And then we can, tie that to like a number of gold pieces equal to your spellcraft level or something. So you can't just like, I dream of 1,000,000 riches and then like it happens. But like that way we can start to kind of have this sort of dream nature, this sort of dream economy, where this being of dreams from the land of dreams is interacting with the real world here. So you can maybe send something into a dream as a minor action on your turn. Or when you complete a long rest, you can summon something out of the land of dreams. And so that way you can have this sort of, from level 1, bag of holding. But like, it's small. It's something small. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Let me think. So, as a minor action on your turn, you can perform the special action commit to dream. In which you convert an item in your a single item in your possession into a memory, and into like the vague concept of a memory, into the vague concept of a dream. You convert like a sword into the idea of a sword, the platonic idea of a sword, into a memory of that item. Then we have this, you can put something into a bag as a minor action on your turn at any point in time. When you complete a long rest, you can form the action of manifest from memory. In which you create an item from your dreams in which you bring item from your dreams into the waking world. There we go. Okay. So then so basically now all we have to do is create special actions. So we want to let's build a little bit of narrative fluff for this ability here. You draw your power from a name. Not going to be a quarry, because that is copyrighted by Eberron, that is existing within the IP of Wizards of the Coast. Enigmatic dream spirit from the Sea of Stars. This spirit has attached itself to you and grants you the ability to manifest your dreams into reality but also grants you the ability to convert or grants you the ability to bring items from no hang on. Create memories of items in your world. Have memories of items from your world in its domain, but also to convert and create memories of the dream realm into tangible object, into in the waking world. Okay, so now all we need to do is create these special actions. Okay, so this is a standard effect. It doesn't have a power roll attached to it. So we can feel safe going to another class here and just kind of stealing their ability here as a template. I believe... who has some good ability? I believe the Anointed does, as far as formatting goes. Nope, you have power rolls there. Wow, no. Blackened Heart, I think it has a powered roll. Or there we go. Aura of Fiendish Resilience. It is all flavor. It is all effect. It is not a spell or a special action there. Okay. Okay, and there. And then we have our two abilities here. So, commit to dream. This is a what? This here is the inheritance of the aberrant minds. Sorcerer. Special action. That's as long. What was that for? Both of Black and Heart special action. We can leave the word sorcerer off. That's nice. Special action. Alright. Description here. Tags, nah, not right now. Minor action, instantaneous, implement an object held in your hands. Range, touch, 5 feet. Target self. Okay, so you offer one item of your choice to your sorceress to the intelligent, to the cognizant dreams, to the awakened. No, hang on. How do we phrase this? You offer one item of your choice. Your choice in your possession. An item in your possession. To the memory of your bound the spirit converts the item into raw sorceress potential within within its dreaming domain. The item, you are no longer able to. Sorry, I'm floundering over my words here for a second. As you perform this action, the item of your choice vanishes from the waking world. This is converted into raw sorceress potential within raw sorceress potential within what? Your dreaming domain? Within your within what? Your domain? Within your creature's domain? Within your bound creature's domain? thin raw sorcerer's potential. I do like the phrase dreaming domain. Let's add some restrictions here. The item may not weigh more than what? 10 pounds? How much does a sword weigh? Okay, seriously, hang on. Okay. Hang on. I'm sorry. My computer is going a little bit haywire here. Okay. Give me one quick second to reset. The ghosts are haunting my setup once again. Come on. What? I don't think I'm using too many system resources here. This shouldn't be like causing some sort of grand conniption within my computer hardware. Hang on. Man. Okay. Okay. Jeez. It just keeps doing this. What the hell? Okay. That's it. I'm sorry. I am gonna need to figure out what's going on with all of my windows and their docking, because this is driving me nuts. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for being in chat, for chatting, for communicating, and for being a part of the community. Thank you all so much for your following, for your follows and everything. You guys, this has been a great stream. I'm so excited to keep going, and I love this community that we're building and the design that we're doing. It genuinely is one of some of the best parts of my week, getting to write and work on this game with you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I hope that your computers are not haunted by the most annoying ghosts possible. Take care. I hope you guys have a good one. And I'll be seeing you next time.